This week on the podcast, if you're struggling to balance cash flow with your business growth, keep on listening as we give you all the tips and tricks you need. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Clare, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. I'm not sure if you're trying a new type of phone charging, Clare, but your phone was plugged in at one end, but there's nothing plugged in the other end.
Is it not?
Yeah, so I've just plugged it in. Is that all right?
Yeah, that is. I need to get a new phone case. It's now not charging through like the MagSafe thing on the back of it. So.
Oh, yeah. Also, why have we got so much milk?
I don't know how to answer that question.
I know. The fridge is just full of milk. Are you starting a new business in milk production or something?
I've actually got like 4 bottles of 4 pints of milk in the fridge. It is.
Anyway, I've got a little bit of shit chat. We just need to rattle through these really quickly. Sergi Brin, driverless bus, grapefruit head. So we'll just touch on these very quickly. So,
what?
So news this week. Sergi Brin, I quite like this. This resonated with me. Sergi Brin, the co-founder of Google, set out some new working guidance to his AI division. He said, I recommend being in the office at least every weekday. 60 hours a week is the sweet spot of productivity. It's good, isn't it?
At least somebody talking practically about...
If you want to get something done.
I think there is...
Smash, yeah.
Yeah, it does feel like the tables are turning a little bit. And I don't like to call it the woke brigade because I do think there is a line. There are some people that require balance in their lives. You know, if you've got kids or you've got something else going on, like you're studying or you've got people that you're caring for, you know, you go through seasons in life.
Yeah.
And some people are in a work season and they want to get ahead and they want to work.
They're on a mission.
They want to work really hard.
They're on a mission for a bit of life.
You know, it's almost like it's like dirty to say that you work 60 hours right now. And yeah, I think there is definitely a bit of backlash coming against this sort of the woke brigade and work-life balance. Mumbo jumbo.
Good on Serge for that. Driverless bus. So I saw my first driverless bus this week, didn't I? Milton Keynes. And I was so excited. You know, people, long-term listeners to this podcast will know
You were overly
I'm a driverless
excited.
car excited. Yeah, because literally this thing was just exactly what I imagined it would be. There's no, obviously, steering wheel or driver or anything. It's literally just a box with a couple of doors. And you just step on it and then it just goes. And it just looks amazing. It's just like commuter paradise. It's what I hope my driverless car is going to look like. But I'd have like a desk in it so I can work and like an armchair in the corner.
Milton Keynes is always, because it was built in like the 60s, it's got like an American style grid system with lots of roundabouts. So it's always been used for, it's used to test the first driverless cars, the first driverless taxis, and now the driverless buses. We've got those little Starlink robots that do the deliveries because we've
super
got like
it's like Silicon Keynes or whatever you want to call it.
Do you know what? Maybe we should start calling it Silicon Keynes. We can start a bit of a branding.
Yeah.
We are going to be on the Oxbridge Arc, aren't we? So right bang in the middle of all that scientific and medical and technology research that's supposed to be flooding into the UK.
And final point from me, this is the week that we finally realised that the size of your head is precisely the same size as a grapefruit.
Yeah, it's amazing how clever I am considering how small my head is.
It's not an ongoing joke, it's an actual fact, but you have the most. I was telling my parents this weekend who were down about how small your head was and they just didn't get it. They were like, she hasn't got a small head. And then when we were sat in the bar next to my dad, my mum and me, they were like, oh yeah, like, and we know this because you have an issue with finding helmets and things when we go like underground and have done cave tours and things like that. They always have to get you a child's helmet, don't they?
Yeah, I always wear a child's helmet, but it's also good because I can wear child's sunglasses and children's hats and they don't have VAT on them.
They don't have VAT on them.
So they're a lot cheaper. So my Ray-Bans, like, nice and cheap because they're kids' ones.
After squozing your head a bit this week, I realised it was exactly the same size as a grapefruit because I tried one in Waitrose and basically my hand fit exactly the same amount over your skull as a grapefruit. So anyway, let's find out what's on this week's news story of the week. So this is news just in, dead hot off the press, quite literally. Workers' right to switch off axed.
And quite a few other things, actually. Labour are rowing a road back on the workers' rights bill, haven't they? I think there's been a lot of backlash from businesses. They've just had constant feedback from businesses that this isn't practical, especially with what's happened with the national insurance increase. So, you know, Labour have got to plough ahead with the national insurance increase now, but they've rowed back massively on this workers' rights bill. There's, you know, basically pretty much everything they said they were going to do is gone.
Yeah. Do you know, do you think if they knew what they knew now, they'd still do the national insurance thing on businesses? because obviously they can't go back on it. It looks weak, so they can't. But it's been a difficult path for them, hasn't it?
Well, it's interesting because, I think the Workers' Rights Bill, do you know what? Maybe it was time to update some of our guidance. That I think there needed to be certain fallbacks that protected employers as well as having protection for employees. Maybe in different economic times, in a flourishing economy, perhaps it was the right time to do it. It just wasn't the right time to do it now.
Yeah, the timing was off.
Yeah.
The theory was right. The timing was off.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So, I mean, the main part to it is they are still going to be doing the Workers' Rights Bill, but the amount of amendments that are now being tabled is insane. And the big things like this scary, right to switch off thing like they do in France has basically been completely and utterly axed. They're saying we'll keep it on the agenda, we will revisit it and all that, but the reality is they're just going to shelve it.
They're not going to get it.
And we saw this literally yesterday. They came out with a huge amount of amendments to the tenants' right. Renters' rights bill. It's had that many different names, hasn't it, as well? And again, they're just like shelving, like Section 21 for private landlords who have less than 5 properties won't be abolished now is kind of what's on the table. Again, all this needs to be
even for everybody else,
finalised.
It won't be abolished until the court system's fit for purpose. And they haven't even put an agenda forward as to how they're going to fix the court process. And that, the experts believe that's a minimum of 5 years, but likely 10 years that will take. So really, I think what I'd be interested to go back and do, when I've got a few hours spare, because I'm a real stickler for detail, is to go back and have a look at their manifesto and see actually what they said they would do. Now, my gut is telling me in their manifesto, they just said that they would push through the renters reform bill and the employment reform bill, and they didn't actually stipulate what would be in it. But it'd be interesting to see if they've dropped some of the things that were in their manifesto. And they keep leaving these vague things on the table, like we'll revisit it in this parliament.
Yeah, it's just more of the same as it's typical politicians, and everything just gets watered down. There's one thing that I've learned. The older I get, is never, until it's enshrined in law, don't make any changes to your business or your life or your investments based on anything at all, because it can change right up to the last minute, including being completely abolished. The
biggest problem they were having with the Renters' Rights Bill was getting it through the House of Lords. I think it was voted.
They tore it apart.
Yeah, they absolutely tore it apart. And for anybody that knows our political system, the MPs can agree on something in the House of Commons, but it has to go through the House of Lords, and they generally have to sign it off as well. And they've rejected pretty much all of it, which is where the problems come in. But from back to the Employment Rights Bill, the main things that have been dropped is that, what did you just say was dropped?
Section 21 being abolished.
No, employment.
Oh, the right
to switch off. That was the main thing. So that's just completely scrapped that, you can still contact people outside of working hours, but other things around 0-hour contracts as well. Yeah. Like, for example, there was something written in around if you cancelled somebody's shift and they were on a 0 hours contract, you still had to pay them, which therefore makes 0-hour contracts completely pointless. Whereas that also has gone. And it's going to be replaced with a very generic clause that says fair compensation. Things like 0-hour contracts are still going to be allowed. You're still going to have a probation period for people. You're still going to be able to get rid of employees and things like that. So
they were saying in this article that one of the biggest challenges is the flexibility of working, and obviously they're trying to bring stability where you can have 8 hours a day every day all through the year, and they're just saying it doesn't, it's not even about working for our business, it just doesn't work for our economy and customer service. What you're saying is we're going to be massively overstaffed when you don't need us, and we're going to be massively understaffed when you really do need us, Mr. Consumer. And there's just so much backlash mainly from big businesses, because they're the ones that are going to find this really difficult to implement.
Yeah.
And when they're working on, some of these businesses working on 3% profit margins, it's just, and with the NI and with everything else, it's just an and it's just, I think what's becoming very apparent with this government is obviously they've been in opposition for years, and they're obviously, extremely inexperienced anyway, and they're just learning on the job. And I think this is what happens in politics, isn't it? They learn on the job. They realise that this is, life's not a theory and life's not a textbook, and, things have unintended consequences. It's really challenging. So let's hope that it stays that way and rows things back in the other direction for businesses and makes life a little easier as we go on, or at least doesn't put the difficult things in they were suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So good news all around. Finally, some good news from the Labour government. Yeah, brilliant. Basically, nothing changes for employment rights.
Well, fantastic. I don't think they're saying nothing. Just watch this space. The big scary things seem to have disappeared off the table for now. So that's great news. Let's move on to this week's deep dive, Claire, where we're talking about cash flow this week, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
So, cash flow versus growth. Are you heading for trouble? How do we know, Claire? What does it mean?
So,
what are you going to tell
we
us?
have done a few podcasts, YouTube videos, things like that, and we're talking about the working capital cycle. And in short, the working capital cycle tells you how long you take to turn stock into cash in your bank. When you know that, you can then plan, because if you're thinking, okay, we're going to invest and we're going to increase our stock levels, it's going to take X amount of days to turn that into money in our bank. So it gives you all sorts of valuable information that can help you make quick decisions.
Is this only relevant to stock-based businesses?
Yes. And that therein lies the issue with a lot of the cash flow metrics, is that they are heavily geared towards businesses that hold stock.
Okay.
Because predominantly they're businesses that tend to struggle with cash flow.
Because they've got so much big expenditure up front and it's held for long periods of time and various other things.
And also, if you think about, accountancy perhaps hasn't been the most dynamic of industries in terms of, the age-old, I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, the words like dinosaur and things like that sort of come into it a lot. So generally, what people learn in accountancy is based off textbooks that they were sort of studying many, many years ago as well, when fundamentally the UK was a manufacturing industrial business and we were much more sort of product-based businesses.
Yeah.
And whereas it's evolving a lot, service-based businesses, become far more mainstream.
I guess in the UK, it must be, I'd love to know what that balance is, but we're a service-based economy, aren't we? Like predominantly.
Yeah, heavily.
You look at when we went out yesterday into Milton Keynes and just like, everybody's just queuing for lunch and whatever. The economy looks like it's booming in the service sector, doesn't it?
Yeah, but hospitality is a bit different, because hospitality, I would still put those businesses into the category of they hold stock because they've got food. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the debate, because I guess that stock that has a really short lifespan, so turns around really quickly compared to some people that have.
Yeah.
So is this how you start to predict these working capital cycles?
Yeah. So what take my business as an example, or your business, state agency, accountancy. We don't sell a single product. Everything is service based. So if we were looking at some of the traditional cash flow metrics of working capital cycle and things like that, they just wouldn't really resonate with our business. They wouldn't make any sense. So what we're going to talk about today is like a different way that you can look at your cash flow if you're a service-based business, which will just give you a little bit of insight into how your business is performing, and also then thinking about growth and growing your business. It's a case of understanding, can your business withstand that growth right now or not?
Okay. So are we assuming that people in stock-based businesses know about working capital cycles and things like that, or are we just leaving that for another day?
We're leaving that for another day.
Okay, got it. So I'm clear. So what we're trying to do is taking the working capital cycle methodology that is used and baked into stock-based businesses, and probably if you have one of them, you really understand that, because you kind of need to, otherwise you're probably going to go bust pretty quick. And we're trying to apply that to service-based businesses.
Yes and no. What we're going to have is like a slightly different way of looking at your cash flow cycle, which gives a holistic view of your business. And actually, stock-based businesses can still use this.
Okay,
it's not just exclusively for service-based. But if you are a service-based business, I would say this is something you absolutely need to be into and you need to understand. So what is it I'm talking about? Well, what we're going to essentially tell you how to do is calculate how you can figure out, if you invest in your business now, so if you spend maybe £1 of money on marketing or an hour of somebody's time in your business, how long does it take for £1 to drop into your bank out the other end? That's what we're going to figure out. And we're going to go through the steps that you can take to understand that.
Amazing. Cool. Where do we start with it now?
So the biggest issue with this is I see a lot of businesses don't properly understand their sales and marketing funnel.
Okay.
And I know people are probably thinking, but hang on a minute.
Just roll back 1 second. I'm amazed you didn't start with a lot of businesses you go to don't even have a sales and marketing funnel.
Well,
I have a marketing function in a lot of cases.
I think a lot of businesses have a process.
Yes.
They understand the steps that, this is where we advertise, and when somebody contacts us, they do it by this method, and then this happens and that happens, and then they end up in our email campaign, and then somebody calls them. I think they understand all of that, but I don't think they've really thought about it in terms of money and or time.
Okay, yeah.
And there might be people out there thinking, but this is an accountancy podcast. Like, what on earth is this woman on about? But accountancy and management accountancy in particular is all about using the resources in your business in the most effective way to grow and deliver the most profit and cash on a long-term basis. So a lot of business owners, the most obvious thing they're going to do to grow is just increase their marketing spend and increase their marketing and sales activity. Of course, there are other things you can do, like buying a business and making an acquisition to bolt onto your business. Things like that. We talked
the other week about the ultimate sales spreadsheet, about, growing the existing customer base. So there's loads of things to do. But like, if you just said in a real binary way, how do you grow your business? You spend more on marketing, you spend more on sales team.
And marketing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But often with a lot of businesses, the lead time is quite long. So how do you know whether your business can withstand that 5, 10, 15, 20, possibly even more money that you're going to spend on marketing? Because if you don't understand the metrics in your sales funnel and your marketing funnel, you don't understand the kickers and the numbers and the timeline, you've got no idea how long you can expect to wait until that money drops through and becomes cash in your bank.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is simply map out what your marketing process is. So as an example, if you do paid for ads, if you put, say, £100 onto a Facebook ad, what happens? Yeah. You need to then map out the different stages that somebody would go through on your customer journey, essentially, and put a timeline against it.
Yes.
And of course, you might also need to consider the fact that you might need to get, let's say, 100 leads from that Facebook ad before it converts to a customer.
Yes.
So it's not going to be, you might say, well, we get 10 clicks a day on our advert. Well, it's then only day 10 that you might get the customer that actually ends up being a customer rather than just somebody that's inquiring and drops out. So you have to factor all of that in. You don't just put an advert out and get a customer the same day.
Yeah. And this is, I guess, difficult if you come in from two angles. This, you've got those established businesses that have done lots of marketing and have that data to delve into. This is really difficult if you're a startup, isn't it? Because you haven't got the data. So you're guessing.
It is.
And I've been there and done that. I've launched loads of businesses. I've put my 10 grand a month marketing in, and and you fingers crossed, you hope you're putting it in the right place. You don't know, and maybe by month 6 or 7 it starts to convert, and it is that long. It's 6 months, sometimes 12 months. So marketing can take, I would say, the minimum marketing takes is 3 months to have any effect.
It does depend what type of business you're in. And this is where, if you're in a consumer-facing business, then consumers tend to make quicker decisions because they tend to be lower value sales typically. But that's not general. Generally, consumers and or lower value products, the pipeline tends to be much shorter, whereas higher value or B2B tends to be a longer pipeline and higher value products. So I know, for example, that for me, it takes on average 4 months for a client when I first start engaging with them on any level for them to actually sign a contract. And then we've got payment terms on top of that. So realistically, if I spend £1 on marketing, I know it's 6 months before I get paid.
And also another big factor is the type of medium of marketing that you're using, because different marketing mediums offer what I would call different feedback loops. So, if you take things like a Facebook funnel, it's a very quick feedback loop. You can put it in within a week, you can get feedback on how it's very cool. It's direct call to action. Yeah. If you put an advert in a magazine or a newspaper, that could take 6 months to take traction. Or if you're doing a leafleting campaign, that person might need to see that leaflet 3 or 4 times over 3 or 4 months before it starts to resonate with them. So the feedback loop is much slower. And that, again, is about understanding those timelines and feedback so you can feed it into your working capital cycle, so to speak, or your cash flow cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think different businesses will be at different stages with this, and like you say, they'll have different amounts of data available. But I would say that a lot of the businesses that I work with, the first thing that they tend to get into when they come off the tools, if you like, and move into more of a managerial MD style role rather than an operator of the business, the first thing they tend to get deep into is sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And that is when they start getting a bit more intelligent with some of their marketing campaign and, funnels and CRMs and all that type of stuff. So therefore, businesses that are probably at the point where they're ready to start implementing what we're talking about have probably got a good amount of data behind them already.
Yeah.
And what you would need to do is break down each of your marketing channels. And you might find that, for example, if you do direct mail, you might find that with direct mail, you put a letter in the post and actually it's quite quick converting and somebody comes to you within 4 weeks.
Yes, but really quick, yeah.
If you're doing maybe, I don't know, like a LinkedIn advert or a Facebook advert, you might find that actually, you have to have 100 clicks to get a lead that then converts, and those 100 clicks might take 2 or 3 months to get.
Yeah.
And
so that's the very start of this cycle and the funnel, the marketing point. So you're saying from marketing spend through to kind of lead, click, or become a customer, but that's not cash in bank, is it?
No. So you've got your marketing funnel. You need to map out your marketing funnel to the point where we would say, okay, you've got a lead.
Yeah.
That then typically you would say that transfers to your sales team.
Okay.
So you've got your marketing process to get the lead,
Yep.
map out how long that takes and how much that costs you.
Yeah.
You've got your sales process, which might be the bit where you're courting the customer, you're quoting the customer, and whatever that process looks like for your business.
Through to becoming a customer. That's the step from lead through to becoming a customer.
Yeah, so that's step 2. And then step 3, you've actually got the service delivery. You've got to give something to your customer. So for me, it might be a set of monthly management accounts or a board meeting. For you, it might be that you sell the house, whatever that delivery of the agreed purchase that the customer made with you.
That is the service
step 3. And then step 4, you've got payment.
Yeah.
So, what payment terms have you agreed with your customer? Are they upfront? Are they 30 days after you've delivered it? Are they on the day that you delivered it? What does that look like? And add those on as well.
And you have to map that right out because there's, every service has everything from a wedding planner that takes half the money up front in deposit, then takes it on the day, through to somebody that might give 60, 90. If they're working with big, massive customers that are really aggressive, they might be on 90 days payment terms. So that becomes really challenging, doesn't it? I guess that part.
Yeah.
But you do know that information usually, don't you?
So it's number 1 is your marketing funnel, work out the number of days. Number 2 is your sales funnel, work out all your sales process, number of days. Number 3 is your service delivery, work out the number of days. And then number 4 is the payment terms. If you give 90 days, add 90 days on. If they must pay 7 days before you even start work, take 7 days off because you're getting cash up front.
Yeah. And as we're talking about cash, is there a factor around... we've obviously talked about the customer's payment. Is there any factor that we need to think about the supplier's payment terms?
Yes. Yeah, great question. Yeah. Right. So do the same for your suppliers. So if your suppliers give you payment terms, so say, for example, you get like an account with Google, for example, for your Google ads, then deduct that from that cycle as well.
Brilliant.
Because you might start your advert on the 1st of January, but you might not pay for it until the 30th of January. So it's that point that we outlay money that we really want to understand. And what you've then got is, in the amount of days, how long you've got to fund your marketing campaign or your growth initiative, how long you've got to fund that for before you can expect that to actually return anything in your bank account. Effectively the cash gap. Yeah, the cash gap, yeah. And where this becomes really powerful is you can then start to think, okay, the compound effect. So if you're like me and you've got a really long cycle of 6 months, then I can't afford to spend £1,000 a week on marketing because that's 25 grand before I've got anything back into the bank. And that's without having to pay any of my staff to actually do the service delivery or the marketing or the sales. Yeah. Interesting. What do you think then, Simon? Easy to implement? I like the fact that you've broken it down into a real logical step-by-step process that I can kind of understand and infill. I'm just trying to think about. Yours would be horrendous if we did this. Well, it is because it's so unpredictable. Yes. And that's what I'm like considering here, because I'm thinking about businesses where it is very predictable and you can probably map that out quite easy. Look, I think that what we're not trying to do here is get a hard and fast, this is the exact date that I can expect cash to land in my bank. We're trying to do is get a ballpark figure together. What is reasonable to expect? I think there's a big difference between doing nothing and doing that. You'd be 90% the way here if you just did it, if you forecast out as much as you can based on the knowledge, up to the knowledge that you've got, and you would most certainly avoid a catastrophic cash issue in your business, wouldn't you, by just having some plan on this? I think that's the key. It's not a guarantee. No. But what you can start doing is when you get a bit more developed at this, so thinking about your business with sales, for example, you only get paid once that house is sold. So if it's a really complex chain or, people pull out and you have to resell the house, that can sometimes take, 9, 12 months. You've had properties on the market. Yeah. Other houses can go through in 3 or 4 months. What you can also then start to do is map out your best and worst case scenario. Yeah. And then when you're making that investment to, okay, let's spend an additional £5,000 a month on Facebook ads, the worst case scenario, because you might say, okay, absolute worst case scenario is 12 months until we get our cash back. Yeah. Can our business survive that? And the more you say this, the more it's made me think just how long this cycle is
if you're taking it right from the very beginning, because most people only think about like this cash thing from the point where they've like, oh, I've sold a product or whatever else. But when you take it right to the beginning, where it's, I've spent £1 to get a customer, it'd be quite frightening for me, because I'm thinking, the average from selling a house, from getting a house on the market is probably 8 months. It's probably taken us 3, 6, 12 months of talking to that client since the lead came in to get that. We're probably a couple of years in from spending that marketing pound till we get paid.
And do you know what I think is quite ironic?
It's crazy, really.
We've probably all done this right at the very start of our business.
And then didn't.
And then we stopped doing it.
You had to at the beginning of your business because cash is so tight.
You know how much cash you need until you get paid. Because I can remember when we did this with YouMove and we were like, best case scenario, it's 6 months until you get paid, but more realistically it's 12 to 18 months.
Where this gets, I guess, once you have this data, and this is why stock-based businesses really need to have this nailed down, because you can start to do some really fancy things to fund your business once you have these details, can't you? Because you can start to fund the gap, so to speak. And that's where it becomes really important. I don't know if it's that easy to do that in service-based businesses, but is it? Yeah.
Well, it is, because you just think like, just on a very high-level simplistic perspective, you think, well, okay, if we're going to spend $5,000 on Facebook ads and we've got a 60-day cycle, for example, let's put those Facebook ads on a credit card.
Yeah.
And get an extra 45 days.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've turned your 60 days back down to 15 days and the impact on your business not so big. So when you have got knowledge of that, you can then start to pinpoint the individual bits in the step and think, okay, how can we reduce this? How can we make this slicker? How can we make this quicker? How can we get that customer over the line quicker?
And I mean, I guess, what we've covered today is looking at it on a very simplistic and basic level. As you work with and implore other accountants like yourself and people like that to work with you, you start to build out models that are even more complicated than this, that, add much more security and confidence to people's cash flow cycles and businesses, don't they? So that's the next level you can take that to.
Well, so what we're doing at the moment, aren't we, with our businesses, we are layering the cash flow cycle of our individual marketing campaigns with the profitability of each individual marketing campaign, because sometimes we've got lots of cash, and generally I find that the marketing cycles that have a longer lead time tend to be because they're for bigger projects or higher margin jobs that we really want, but they've got a really long lead time. So if we're really squeezed on cash flow, we're not going to do those.
Yeah.
So we'll dial down the marketing on those and turn up those ones that deliver that quicker but less margin profit.
This is about imploring people and business owners to be able to make smarter decisions because they've got the right information at the right time in their hands to do that, isn't it?
And if you've just got one marketing campaign, obviously you don't really have anywhere to go, but a lot of businesses don't have that. A lot of businesses will have multiple marketing channels, and it's about understanding which one to dial up and dial down based on your finances at the time. Are you tight on cash, or are you rolling in cash but you're not making profit? Or, it's...
Are you maximising the utilisation of your cash and not storing too much of it unnecessarily?
Exactly.
And there's a million ways to look at it, isn't there? Well, thanks, Claire. I think let's wrap that up for today, because I think we've delved quite deep into sort of the cash flow versus growth dilemma that everybody has. I think that's been really, really helpful. And if people want to know more and delve into it even more, they can reach out to you. And let's see what's in this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. So, Claire, sleep is, I would argue, the most important thing in life. I mean, sleep is health, isn't it?
Yes, I think I can directly link in all my life when I've been in jobs I've hated, or when you're in times of life that you're stressed, you just don't sleep, and it's a sign that your mind isn't healthy and your body isn't healthy. If you're in pain or you smash yourself in the gym, you don't sleep well, and if you're mentally unwell as well, stressed, tired, overworked, you don't sleep well. So I feel like how well you sleep is a measure of how good and how well your life is.
1,000,000%. It's something I've learned in life is that I would invest, it's right up there with health, invest in the best things in sleep. And we've done that throughout I mean, one of the things I do to get to sleep is listen to this podcast, and it sends me straight off. But no, we have invested in yet another step. We've done mattress tops, we've done amazing mattresses, we've done all those things to make our bed as good as possible. We've
now got the best luxurious Egyptian cotton sheets.
Yeah. But what's this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra?
Well, I think you're either going to love or hate this, and I'm not sure which side of the fence I sit on yet, but it is to get rid of the old microfiber and feather pillows and replace it with memory foam pillows.
Yeah, and I was really anti this. I'm not really a memory foam fan, but I think memory foam's come a long way from the days of it sweating and feeling plasticky and horrible, and it's very breathable now.
I feel like we're missing the best bit of the story here, because really people don't care about our pillows. But when we went to Dunelm to try out all their pillows, it was like, well, how do you know that this pillow's comfortable? You can put your head on it and you can push it with your hand, but it is not like lying on a bed. And there was no beds there. So Simon literally lay on the floor in Dunelm as I passed every single pillow down to him, and you rated them, didn't you?
I think you've got to try it in a realistic setting. There's no point doing it any other way. You did say when we walked past the mattress shop the other day that do you think they'd mind if we went and just went to sleep for 4 hours? And I think that's a reality, is that if your back starts hurting after 4 hours on your current mattress, you need to stay in the shop for 4 hours before you're going to know whether that one's going to be any good or not. I think it's perfectly acceptable. Anyway,
I don't think it's acceptable to go for a nap.
Check it out. We dodged it for a while, but honestly, the first day that we slept with these memory foam pillows, we didn't wake up, did we?
No, we actually didn't. No, we don't wake up with alarms. We have electric blinds that open, and so we get woken up by the daylight and the noise of the blind, and we slept straight through it.
Even that didn't work. It was, and
we woke up about 8:45, didn't we?
It's definitely been directly linked to these pillows that we've just slept. We slept well anyway, but a tiny bit better. Just these, what I call the tiny 1% gains in your sleeping.
It was more like a 10% gain on this occasion.
Exactly. So thanks for joining us for another week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed that one. As always, if you feel like you may have outgrown your current accountant and you would like to work with Clare and the team at Profit Cash Growth, just nip over to the website profitcashgrowth.com. You check out the YouTube channel, and please have a listen to all of the back catalogue of the podcast. There is tons and tons of evergreen content available now in the podcast. And as always, we just ask you, if you don't mind, rate, reviewing, subscribing to it. And if you know a friend who owns a business and is struggling with all things finances, then just ping a link to this podcast or any of the other ones that you found really helpful, and just say, hey mate, I know this is going to help you, and these guys pop out some great content every week, and we'll see you again next week.